Let's talk about the ACC. What's going on in the ACC right now? The Magnificent Seven, which contains Florida State, Clemson, NC State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. I counted there for those of y'all that are watching live just so we can keep a tally. That Magnificent Seven, being led by Florida State and Clemson, currently are meeting with lawyers and taking a look at the grant of rights deal within the ACC. And those conversations from where I'm sitting, from how I'm reading this, sounds like, hey, how can we get out of this? How ironclad is this grant of rights deal? And it's funny for me to picture this like all these teams as individuals going down the hall and meeting with these lawyers. They walk into the building. Florida State, Clemson, have a seat. UNC, Virginia Tech, you guys can stand for obvious reasons. Let's take a look at how this grant of rights deal is going to work out. Is there a way out of this? Just joking about the whole team standing, you know, I'm just poking fun. So here's where that stands right now. The grant of rights runs through 2036, and even if you were to leave the ACC, which would cost a pretty penny for all these schools, how much? Who knows, but it's at least $120 for the exit fee, $120 million to exit the ACC. Even if you get out of the ACC still owns your broadcast rights. Now, why is that a problem for these teams within the ACC? Teams in the SEC, teams in the Big Ten are making a smooth $30 million per year more than these teams in the ACC. And so if you're any of these brands, any of these schools, you expect to compete on a national level, on a national landscape. How are you supposed to compete with some of these teams when they have better resources consistently? And I'm not saying just one-off year, you make a run at it. TCU did that last year. They weren't the most well-resourced team. But I do think that you have to at least take a look and say, for sustained success, it's not wild to assume that you need better resources. You need on-par resources to compete with the teams you want to compete with. Florida State, perfect example. This coming season, they expect to compete for a national title. Good for Florida State. Same for Clemson. Expect to compete for a national title. Good for Clemson. That's fine in a one-off situation, but as time grows on, if you continue to go $30 million in the negative compared to your other teams in the SEC and Big Ten, that's going to add up over time now. It's going to add up. And so they're saying, listen, we got to find a way to make some more money. And it sounds like that hasn't gone well based on them having conversations with lawyers about trying to get out of the ACC. So this is where we find ourselves. All right, I got some more thoughts on this. Make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at JD Piquel. We talk ball every single day. We're talking about college football in May. You love the sport. We love the sport. Subscribe. Come join the party, all right? So ultimately, this was inevitable. This was going to happen. Whether it happened this week, whether it happened 5 years from now, it can only take so much time before these teams that expect to compete how they want to compete start saying, hey, excuse me, we're worth a lot of money. We're worth a lot of eyeballs, and we aren't getting, I think, what we're deserving of. The revenue split, even so. Florida State, I mean, heck, Michael Alford went to bat for his team and said, listen, we bring in a lot of money to the ACC. We don't take home nearly as much as we're bringing in. What gives? And so these teams now are saying, well, we got to figure this out. Something's got to give here. So this was inevitable. You can't tell me I'm worth this much and then see a smaller portion of the pie. And then, oh, by the way, the teams that you're competing with, they're getting a larger piece of a larger pie. And I'm supposed to just stay put. Not how this works. Not how this works by any stretch of the imagination. So where we're at right now in this conversation, this is the part where everyone likes to talk about how hard it's going to be to execute. I mean, you read the article on The Athletic about this. It's league officials, people close to situations saying it's one thing to say, it's a whole other thing to do. I don't think any of that is untrue, but I do think that the people that are involved in these conversations have a whole lot of power and a whole lot of money, and there's usually a way to get this thing done. Now, I'm not saying it's an easy path. I'm not saying it's just going to get done overnight. But remember how this all went with Oklahoma and with Texas leaving to the SEC? There was a Friday where the news broke, hey, listen, it's not going to happen. Sorry, just too expensive. Couldn't get it done. Couldn't see eye to eye. Sorry, not going to happen a year early. We all sort of said, okay, all right. Then a week later, hey, it's happening. Deal went through. We found a way to get it done. The price tag was met. The deal was agreed to. Texas and Oklahoma leaving to the SEC early. Remember how quickly that happened? I mean, there are like I said, so many people with power and money and motivation to get this done. But at the same time, the room isn't that big. This is not a thing where we need like 5,000 people to all be on the same page. I think it's a small number of people need to come to an agreement and need to figure out a way through this grant of rights. What I'm trying to say is I think it's going to happen. Now, when? I don't know. I don't know the timeline. But we're at the part where everybody says how insurmountable this obstacle is, and I think some of that kind of could be a little bit of a distraction while we go handle this over here and you sort of chew on the fact that it's so difficult to sort our way through the grant of rights. I think this is going to happen. You know why? Because you have numbers here. You have strength in numbers. It's not just Clemson going to bat. It's not just Florida State going to bat. Sounds like they're leading the charge, but right now you have half the conference in the ACC saying, how do we get out of this? Hey, you're smart. You're a lawyer. You went to law school. You passed the bar. How do we get out of this? You know more than us. Let's talk about this. That's the conversation being had right now, and it's not just one school. To have half the ACC trying to make a move here, I think that means something. I think that will bode well for it getting done. You have too many people with too much power wanting change for this to just stay stagnant and to say, yep, sorry, grant of rights, ironclad. For those of y'all listening on podcast, banging on the table a little bit. Ironclad, can't get through. Sorry, you're going to have to wait 10 years. Have to wait 13 years, whatever it ends up being. I don't think that'll happen. So I think that the Magnificent Seven, Florida State, Clemson, NC State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, all have a legitimate case. I think they will find a way out of this. The timeline, I don't know, but this was going to happen at some point. Was going to happen at some point. When it happens, I don't know, but the Magnificent Seven are going to find a way out, in my opinion. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.